The hiring system is broken. The gap between what candidates believe and how hiring actually works has never been wider. Today, we step inside the recruiter's mind. What matters, what doesn't, and why rejection is often misinterpreted. This episode is about translating market feedback into clarity instead of self-doubt. Welcome back to Loops Season 1. I'm your host, Josh Thompson-Persaud, co-founder of WorkSelf. Today we're joined by Joe Faulkner, a recruiter and career coach who's in the trenches of hiring right now. This conversation is about what actually gets you hired and what quietly disqualifies you. So if you want a job in 2026, this is your episode. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you for having me.
In the last episode, we talked about transition and feeling lost. Today, we're looking at the market reality, how hiring decisions are actually made, and how to engage the system without losing yourself. So, Joe, what do candidates misunderstand most about the hiring system?
Well, I'll offer perhaps what sounds like a simple answer to that, but something which I think is not to be overlooked. I believe it actually seldom now comes down to a candidate's qualifications, whether that's a degree or otherwise, or even their experience, their previous jobs. They are a component of it, but I think what's perhaps in danger of being neglected and what's incredibly important is an ability to present their capabilities around certain scenarios, traits that they possess. We're in a really dynamic time at the moment within industry, and that brings a set of challenges but also opportunities. So what companies and hiring managers want to see are candidates that can present evidence that they can problem solve. They can bring creativity to certain scenarios. So I think CVs and evidence of learning remains important, but it's about painting a fuller, more comprehensive picture about someone's holistic skill set and ability.
And how does that balance between the sort of interview process, between the CV, between the cover letter? What are sort of the key elements that can accelerate that?
So I think a CV will always remain important. It's a great foundational explainer about yourself. There is an opportunity to optimize it, I think. And I think it goes beyond prescriptively sort of detailing your experience and even achievements. So I always encourage candidates to consider themselves a bit of a personal brand proposition, and how do they want to articulate that to prospective employers. And I think a great way to do that is to kind of create a bit of storytelling about yourself. So it's looking at your CV as an opportunity to tell a story about your achievements, create a bit of a narrative. And it totally depends on the job you do, but I think in my line of work, it's something which I advise to kind of creative candidates, marketeers, is almost to consider their experience a collection of case studies. So it's an opportunity to package maybe a year or 2 or 3 years experience within something which resembles more of a case study. Talking about how they've diagnosed a problem, how have they addressed it, what was their thinking around that, the solution that they delivered, and obviously the results from it. So you want to keep it clean. A CV doesn't need to be heavy prose, but I think language and formatting and kind of bring that element of storytelling to the fore is really important.
Yeah, I remember when I was coming up, there was always this element of stuff as many buzzwords as you can inside the bounds of the box in your CV. Is that a good strategy, or is that just something that people do because they think it works?
Yeah, really, really good question. I think we're in a time where there's this kind of school of thought that is around kind of matching skills and, like you say, sort of buzzwords. I think there's a foundational kind of value in that, but the best, most successful candidates and the ones which perhaps receive the most attention from hiring managers and recruiters alike are the ones that can kind of tell a bit more of a more complete picture and story. I think to extend that slightly, moving past the CV, that whole communication, that whole dialogue with a recruiter or a hiring manager is quite nuanced. It shouldn't be looked at as a very prescriptive transactional conversation. It's actually a really great opportunity for a candidate to open up a genuine dialogue with a prospective employer. It's important to ask the right questions and have some good open conversation around broader topics. So the starting point is talking about your experience and giving them a sense of your ability, but it's also a brilliant opportunity for a candidate to learn. And I think sometimes, again, that gets overlooked a bit.
Yeah. You mentioned before, this is a bit of a disrupted job market. There's a lot of like transformation and change, evolution going on right now. What makes this job market compared to, let's say, the last 5 or even 10 years so challenging and so difficult?
Well, I think it is. I think there are challenges. You're right. I actually also believe it's a really dynamic, interesting time. What I enjoy about my job is I'm fortunate enough to sit at the intersection of talented candidates and also ambitious businesses. So I've got the vantage point to really learn a lot. And what we're seeing is a huge amount of change. There's a lot of ambiguity as well. So I think we've probably moved from a time where you knew generally how your job would pan out and the milestones you would need to reach to progress to the next level.
Yeah.
So there's more of an onus on a candidate to demonstrate a sense of agility, be open to challenges, and also I think a degree of fearlessness and independence to upskill, stay abreast of trends and different developments. So there is opportunity, and there's absolutely it's a really dynamic space. It's around, I suppose, approaching it in the right fashion and being prepared to push yourself further, learn new skills, and be pretty agile with your approach.
Yeah, I think the premise of this episode is that, and the bold claim that the hiring system is broken. And I think one of the ways that we see that play out in reality is that the career ladder that people used to climb and the career paths that people used to follow are no longer the linear sort of evolutions that they used to be. So is it realistic to believe that when somebody hires you that they're hiring you for the long term, or should you really treat it more as like everyone's an independent consultant and we're all moving around? Yeah,
well, that's a tough question to answer. I think that it's all relative. It's all very subjective to the person, to the company that you're working for. And I would say that the tenure in jobs compared to 5-10 years ago probably is a bit more modest. I think you see people move a little bit more often, but there's also an emerging opportunity to join some really exciting kind of scale up companies. So you could, so I suppose the counter argument is within 2 or 3 years there's an opportunity to achieve a huge body of work and really career defining work, perhaps far quicker than you could have done previously.
Yeah, and this is because of acceleration in through, I guess, AI, through optimizing processes.
Yeah, it is, and the what I consider the knock-on effect to that is emerging skill sets.
Right.
So I think there's less prescriptive, narrow, bandwidth for a person's career. Perhaps, I speak to creatives who are now moving into more of a data-led direction and vice versa, because those worlds are converging. So I think that's exciting, actually, and I think it gives people a breadth of skill set, an opportunity to pursue, and that's purely down to, as you say, the evolution of industry.
Yeah, and going back to this idea of what makes you hireable, promotable, that kind of thing, what is the role of identity, like personal identity or even professional identity, in that process?
Well, I think, I think it'd be a mistake to advise people to totally reinvent themselves and to 1 minute be a LinkedIn influencer. We've probably got a few too many of them.
Indeed.
But I would consider it always advantageous, and it's something which I always recommend to candidates, is to be aware of connectivity. Networking is a pretty old kind of concept, and it retains a huge amount of merit and significance and importance. So, there's a lot of opportunity for you to elevate yourself from, what is potentially quite a saturated candidate market, by engaging in your professional communities, whether that's, posting a thought piece on LinkedIn, attending an event, dare I say, speaking on a podcast. So there remains avenues to explore to build your personal brand, but I think more importantly, alongside that, if you do that well and you're engaged in doing that, you're also learning by osmosis. You're being involved in your field of specialism. You're learning about developments, trends, etc. So I would recommend a person who's ambitious to not be passive with their career aspirations. I think it's around connecting, engaging, and showing up.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important part. Just the showing up fundamentally is it already gets you through so many doors of people who are not going to take that opportunity and fill that space.
It does, and without sounding glib, recruiters like myself, we are humans too. We do quite enjoy getting to know people. So
No way.
It's true. Despite the preconception. So and I say that sincerely because I think from a candidate's perspective, go into the conversations with recruiters, with prospective employers, with a mindset that there's an opportunity, and that opportunity may not be in the short term. It may be medium or long term. It's around kind of building that network, maintaining peer-to-peer relationships. I've done it myself. I remember being pretty deflated after not securing a job I really wanted. It wasn't the right fit. I kind of knew it wasn't, but I really wanted to work for this particular company. Mm-hmm. This was a few years ago. 18 months later, I was working for them because, fortunately, I kept in contact with them, and we maintained a relationship which kind of made sense for both of us, exchanging insight, being there to share what we saw about the market. And by maintaining that relationship, the next opportunity did arise, and it was a better fit, and I enjoyed subsequently 4 really, really great years working for that business. So I do believe there's a lesson in that in itself.
Did that relationship evolve organically, or how did you nurture that?
I think it was a case of separating the disappointment of not landing the role. I think it was helped by the fact that I knew at that time the original role wasn't the right fit for myself. Mm-hmm. But walking away with a sense of I've got to know them really well, and I like the people, I like their mission. I think there's a fit there in the future. So I think it was being cognizant of it may not have been right now, but there's value in kind of maintaining that relationship and just having a bit more of a long-term kind of perspective on it.
So it's almost like creating a places to go shortlist for you to, explore potential career directions. So even if it doesn't work out now, maybe you have something lined up and you can build into it.
Yeah, I think so. And I also think, it shouldn't be overlooked. Job hunting, the job market, recruitment, whatever sort of term you want to apply, it's a very relational business. It's around people. So we can kind of adapt to new ways of working with automation, with different technology to maybe streamline processes. But fundamentally, it's around relationships and connections. So I think by investing in that, it will accelerate anyone's chances of the pathway that they want to follow, eventuating.
Yeah. And Joe, you're a career coach as well, and I'm curious, how, in terms of the insights that you get from your clients, how does that interact with your recruitment brain versus your career coaching brain?
Yeah, it's been a brilliant experience actually learning kind of the foundations around the career coaching, and I think there's been some great, really, really relevant sort of takeouts from that. I think what it's allowed me to do is to be a better listener, to be totally honest. So I think what I've learned, having worked in this industry for quite a long time, you have to really listen to the client and the candidate, which sounds quite an obvious thing. But if you don't, and if you take a few shortcuts and try to match something which on paper may make sense, but ultimately, if you've done the right level of kind of scrutiny, interrogation and listening, if you know it doesn't truly fit for whatever reason, it's best not to try to engineer that fit, because longevity is really important. Clients want to work with me if I place great talent into their business, which make a really big impact and continue to do so over a length of time. The career coaching is an ongoing work in progress for myself, but there's been some brilliant learnings, and that listening, that active listening, feels like something which has been particularly useful. And I think perhaps in hindsight I overlooked previously.
Yeah, I'm curious because my, position on this is that we're in a society where it's actually very difficult to hold somebody's attention and to feel validated, to feel heard. So I'm curious if that's changed the way that you go about your recruitment conversations.
I think for me personally, it's always started at trying to understand someone's intrinsic motivations. So I think if you do that and you maintain a level of sort of scrutiny towards that, then that always steers you in the right direction. I think, if that answers your question. So I think it's giving someone the space to say, look, this is what I want to achieve, but then also just probing and say, well, why is it? Talk to me about that. What is it around that sort of path that you want to follow which appeals, and just getting that fuller picture as to what their motivations are. And often you end up in a very different place. Sometimes you can speak to a candidate who says, this is the next step for me. I've done this. I'm a marketing director. I should be a chief marketing officer. And when actually you spend some time really getting to know them and understanding them, and they feel comfortable kind of telling you a little bit more about their aspirations and the factors which do influence them, they might reach a very different conclusion, and that's absolutely fine. So you just want to collaboratively work that out together.
Yeah, it almost sounds like in a way like a career therapy of exploration, navigation, transition, and processing some of the emotions that come along with that. That might be things like grief, confusion, lack of clarity, lack of motivation. Yeah,
I think so. I think in the time that we're at the moment, I don't think it's unfair to say that there's also a degree of fear. I think that some, a collection of demographic, a whole generation almost of very talented people have reached what may feel like a bit of a crossroads, where their jobs have changed, the career or the future that they felt that they were heading towards, and in some cases the latter stages of their career, they feel perhaps is in jeopardy. So it's around understanding that and creating, I suppose, a conversation where you're exploring what options are available, and actually the reality is plenty are, but I suppose it's staying kind of true to the reality, but also maintaining a sense of optimism and exploring, like I say, the pathways, the avenues, the opportunities which do exist for ambitious, talented people.
Yeah, that's a lovely sentiment, and I think maybe one closing question here is speaking directly to those people who are navigating this transition and are maybe having a difficult time, or are facing rejection, or are facing confusion and just don't really know where to go. What would you say to those people?
Well, firstly, I'll say that everyone is entitled to, and I've felt this previously myself, and I will again in my career, to have a sense of disappointment. If you're interviewing for a role and you don't receive that offer, you're convinced it was the right role. It will dampen your spirits if you don't receive the offer and it doesn't pan out the way that you envisaged. I do think there's a big difference though between feeling a sense of disappointment and also a feeling of failure. Two very different things. I think a sense of disappointment you can reflect on and you can learn from and use to your advantage. So I think if you walk out of a scenario where you haven't received the job offer, there's an opportunity to learn and get feedback as to why, to gain some really important insights, to reflect, to practice a little bit of mindfulness, to remind yourself that this happens and it will continue to happen to everyone in the job market. But what can you take from it? What insights can you learn and apply to what's next? There's no reason why the next role isn't the right role, and there's often a lot of extenuating circumstances which you're just not aware of. A job offer is predicated on a few things: your suitability and compatibility, but also things which are entirely out of your control, and that could be budget, other hiring priorities, timing, bad luck. So I think a piece of advice would be to consider a setback opportunity for growth.
Yeah, it's a lovely sentiment. The market is always giving feedback. The mistake is taking that feedback personally, I think, is what's going on here, instead of informationally. When you learn how to read the signal without losing yourself in the noise, you become much more hireable. So next episode is our season 1 closer, purpose, and why chasing it too early can quietly stall your life. Thank you so much for having a great conversation with me, Joe. And till then, stay well and keep closing your loops.